Welcome to LifeWorks Today. This podcast is provided so that together we can create a world in which all people love their lives. Our current human systems aren't working. The way of superior versus inferior, or management versus employee, or adult versus child. We need a powerful, positive, and sustainable transformation. This podcast is for you who seek to be happy, fulfilled, and peaceful so that your abundant life works today.
So welcome everybody to LifeWorks Today. This podcast is designed to bring you hope and to bring you some new ideas. And boy, we really need some of both of those right now. Today's episode is called Game-Changing Questions, Appreciative Inquiry. And for many of you, you might not even know what that is. So I'm going to take some time to kind of go over what that is with you. In all my past episodes, the bottom line in what I'm sharing with you is I'm describing conditions and conversations that are needed for the success of people as individuals and in groups. That's what really culture is at its most foundational. We have the culture of us, we have the culture at our workplace, we have the culture at our homes and in our churches and our neighborhoods. Culture is just the conditions and conversations that you sort of stand for. So those conditions and conversations either help people feel encouraged and supported and help them really gain courage to grow and to participate fully in their life or in their work, or those conditions and conversations don't support that. So now's a time where it's really evident how strong or weak culture is within people and between people. A lot of people are suffering in that inferiority complex. They're failing to feel those four core needs of feeling empowered, lovable, connected, and contributing. And they're unable to take responsibility for what they're thinking and saying and doing at times because they're so stressed from what's going on right now. And when we have an underdeveloped ability to motivate ourselves and to really have a lot of good self-care, what happens is that we get really stuck. And so I don't think there's a better time right now to showcase the particular tool and concept of appreciative inquiry. The work I do is designed to provide specific support systems where people ultimately are unable to handle whatever life throws at them. So right now, the major stressor of today is COVID-19, with all of the challenges of that. But before this pandemic and during it and after it, there's always ongoing stressors. Some of the stressors that I've been dealing with, or many people have been dealing with for the last years and moving forward, are the faster speed of change, the amount of complexity, the globalization that we're experiencing, the new technologies, just to name some of them. So my work is often about helping people in stress-producing situations. Like before this pandemic, we would work with companies where there were changes in leadership or persistent negative problems, conflicts, underperformance, or where companies were experiencing rapid growth or mergers, acquisitions. Really anything that creates uncertainty and fear is where you can see the strength or weakness of individuals and groups. And in the vast majority of people, when uncertainty and fear hit, the result is that people catastrophize. It's a coping mechanism that a lot of people turn to because they think it's going to help them survive what's happening. And what happens instead is that catastrophizing takes a really big toll on us, and it actually slows us down and weighs us down. So that's why I'm bringing this particular topic to you today. So the questions I want to answer for my listeners in this episode include, what is appreciative inquiry? Why does it matter? And how does it actually work in real world situations? So first of all, what is appreciative inquiry? It's a powerful and often unknown communication tool that forces our minds out of catastrophizing and into possibility thinking that really mobilizes us so that we can rally to be part of a solution instead of, fall into being part of the problem. So today, I've invited a special guest that I'll introduce in a minute. She's a person who not only learned appreciative inquiry in a culture transformation process that her company adopted from Lifeworks systems, she applied it in some very specific and significant ways. And that's why I invited her, because when she shares real life examples, it'll help all of you to understand the relevance of this tool and the difference it can make in people's lives. So as we go into a little bit more about appreciative inquiry, I want to give you a couple of opening quotes because I love quotes. They really say things in a way that just inspire me. So one of the quotes that really goes with this topic is when Gandhi said, "We must become the change that we wish to see in the world." A lot of times we ride on the change others want to see in the world, but really we must become that change. And then this is a really great quote from Einstein. There are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle, and the other is as though everything is a miracle. So I can see that happening all over the place. Sometimes people think, oh my gosh, this is a disaster, and it is on some levels, but they're also missing that everything is a miracle, that everything is helping everything, that everything is happening to strengthen something in us. So I want to just go a little bit deeper into what is appreciative inquiry. It's a favorable way of assessing something. It's focusing on what we admire. It's focusing on what we approve of or what we feel grateful for. And this is not about being positive thinking necessarily just for the sake of avoiding negative feelings. It is not a denial of negative feelings, but it's using questions that are appreciative to cause intentional outcomes. And I'll go into some examples of that so you understand what I'm saying. So appreciative inquiry is a very collaborative process that meets those four core needs of all people and the needs for positive, intense connection while providing this structure for gathering and sharing information with even if it's just two people or a whole team of people. It allows the sharing of the best information and stories between people. So the basic process of appreciative inquiry is the use of intentional or fateful questions, which result in interviews and conversations and stories that create positive outcomes in the future. So appreciative inquiry is consistent with the latest research in the new sciences, including quantum physics, chaos theory, complexity theory, simultaneity, meaning that everything is being built side by side, and constructivism. So quantum physics is saying what we focus on is what we manifest. When we are in community, the chaos within that community is organizing into either a solution or a problem. So how do you manage complexity in a positive way? And how do we build things simultaneously? That's what's going on in the world right now around agility or digital transformation. Just a lot of the trends that are occurring are responses to our need to create together positive outcomes. So appreciative inquiry helps people to access positive memories that are often ignored otherwise. So I want to give you two stories to kind of explain that to you. Let's say you're a person that's married to someone and you're having problems in your marriage and you go to a traditional marriage counselor, just as an example. Not that appreciative inquiry is just for counseling or anything like that, but if you went to a traditional counselor, what they would do is they would have you identify the problem. So, what's the problem in your marriage? And maybe the wife says, well, he never helps me with the chores. And maybe that counselor, that traditional counselor, will try to get to the root cause of it. And maybe that wife will say, well, I think it's because his mom did everything for him and kind of spoiled him. And then maybe the counselor will start brainstorming with them about some things they could do, like making a shared schedule of chores or something like that. And then that counselor might help them develop some kind of action plan, like what they're going to do next. And so what happens is that the problems in this example are thought of as a problem that has to be fixed. So in appreciative inquiry, it's a very different process. So that same counselor would say, I know you're here because you have some problems to work through, and we're not going to ignore that. But I want to ask you first, when were you most in love? What was happening when you were most in love? Can you tell me the story of that? Will you tell me what you thought about each other, what you said to each other, what other people thought about you, what other people said about you? What were the happiest memories you had together? What are the success stories of your marriage right now? What are the things that you're doing well together? Like maybe they're parenting well together, or they agree on finances or something. What are those stories? And he's really pulling all of the details of that. What kind of strengths do you both have? And then instead of brainstorming a solution, what that person would be doing is asking what would be the vision for your marriage if it was the most supportive possible? What is the story of that? What would you be telling people about when you're on the other side of this problem? What are you saying to each other about your more improved and positive and successful and encouraging marriage? What would you be thinking and saying and doing about all of that? What would be happening differently? And then let's focus on that. What would be a next step that you would take? So really, instead of looking at anything as a problem to be fixed, the idea of appreciative inquiry is to approach everything kind of as a mystery and as an opportunity to really look at and reevaluate what we have wanted, what we do want, and what we want going forward that really brings happiness. And a lot of us don't take time to even ask ourselves, what am I feeling and what do I want? As most of you that have been listening to this series, you've heard me say it over and over again. Sometimes it's almost alien to us to think, what am I feeling? What do I want? In our work with companies, a lot of times appreciative inquiry is huge when people are learning how to identify their purpose and their values and their visions for how they're going to live out their purpose. And so that's a subject for another podcast, but I just want you to know appreciative inquiry is something that when we are most successful at solving problems, we've already inadvertently moved into appreciative inquiry. And so what this is about today is to help you more intentionally move toward appreciative inquiry. Another story that I wanted to share with you is an example of a bowling team. There were these two bowling teams, and they were both videotaped. And the first team's video was edited so that it only showed the bad or weak bowling moves. And the other team's video was edited so that it only showed their strongest, most correct bowling moves. And both teams were asked to watch the videos for the intention of improving their games. When I'm telling this story in groups, I'll often ask them what bowling team was able to improve their bowling game. Was it the team that focused on its mistakes, or was it the team that focused on its successes? And most people will say, well, of course, it's the team that focused on its successes. What's interesting is that both teams improve because intention is so important. So just holding the intention that I want to improve my game has power of its own. But here's what happened that I thought was so interesting. The team that watched its mistakes together improved only by 30%. That's not bad. But the team that watched its strengths collectively, they improved by 100%. In other words, they doubled their scores. And they probably had more fun watching those videos than the ones that were like, oh my God, look at what I just did. So it's not that we can't solve problems through catastrophizing, although a lot of times it causes a whole new set of problems. It's just that it's the hard way to do things. And you know, we just need to recognize that our natural tendency is to go into that catastrophizing. So I'm encouraging you to choose something like appreciative inquiry as part of your strategy in your life so that you don't fall into that habit of focusing on what's broken, what's not working, what's a problem, and all of the heaviness of that. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to introduce you to Lisa Dean. Lisa is a project manager at ESSA Health, and she works in lots of different areas related to software development and IT kind of projects. I'm going to let her explain that a little bit more if she wants to. But she is very flexible kind of a person that works on a lot of different kinds of initiatives. She's been doing that for over 15 years and almost 5 years at ESSA Health. And ESSA Health, in this area that Lisa works, they have fully immerse themselves in the Lifeworks systems culture transformation. So I'm so proud sometimes when I hear about some of the great work they're doing and how strong their teams are and what's going on there. And Lisa came into this department and she learned all these new concepts and tools. She really wholeheartedly adopted them. And appreciative inquiry was one that she took really far with some of her teams. And so I wanted her to be able to talk about that because it's one thing to conceptually understand a tool or a concept. It's another thing to actually hear stories about how it's being used. So without any further ado, I introduce you to Lisa Dean. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, thanks for having me today.
I'm so grateful, especially with you being in healthcare. So ESSA Health is in healthcare and they're really swamped. So Lisa, I really appreciate you taking out time to do this with me.
Absolutely.
Is there anything you want to tell our audience about yourself that maybe I'm just, skimming over too much?
I think you told about my history well. I do everything from software installations that are needed to internal projects that need attention, that are business cases that we need to adapt to, new rules or better enhancements for our EMR, anything like that.
When you manage, do you manage teams of all different sizes?
Yes, I can manage a team that we might have just maybe internal, and we may have 5 to 10 people. If I'm working with a vendor, I could be working with 20 people, 10 from our side, 10 from their side, it just depends. I will say that one of the things as project managers that we intuitively do is we automatically jump into traditional problem solving. We get a charter, it tells us what a business case is, what the goal of the project is, and any potential problems or opportunities that we might run into. So it lends itself to us getting into digging in the dirt and not panning for the gold. So appreciative inquiry, it just hit to the soul of what I do every single day. It was an easy transition for me to go, oh, I need to start sharing this appreciative inquiry with my teams. And I wanted to see what the difference in attitude as a group, what it made. And it was significant in how everyone left a conference room after a project meeting. So that was probably one of the biggest things for me that I ran into with appreciative inquiry that was helpful and insightful to me.
Yeah, because you had come into learning this tool after at least 10 to 12 years of doing it the old school way, right?
Correct, yes.
Yeah, and when you describe a typical project manager falling into the digging through the dirt, you know, it reminds me of the classical description of men. Men are often described as jumping in and trying to fix a problem, when a lot of times the storytelling about what's happening is the most important part. And then the problems very organically sort of arise. Or if you are telling the stories that are nightmarish, then more problems seem to arise, right?
Correct. Yes. Everybody falls into, let me start telling you everything horrible that has happened or could happen. And so I really started my project meetings out with talking about the dream state. Forget all the rules, forget all the parameters that we have to live in, forget that they exist. And let's just talk about what would we do if we could do anything. And that really put us on a foundation for starting the conversations out in a more positive direction. And you could see people light up. They're like, oh, wow, how fun is this to, think about solutions without any rules for just a few minutes. Really successful.
It's like the opposite of catastrophizing. It's
Yes.
really dreaming instead. And what's kind of interesting for those of you that are listening, this particular group in ESSA, their mission is to find joy through faith in possibilities. And so this appreciative inquiry falls right into that, right? You're focusing on what are the possibilities, the positive possibilities.
Absolutely.
So that's awesome. I'm going to give a couple quick examples for the people listening to what's the difference between regular communication and appreciative communication. And then maybe we can talk about how you applied this kind of thing in the very structure of some of your projects. So an example of appreciative inquiry is if I were to say to you, Lisa, how are you today? Your head might go to the place of, gosh, I'm really tired. I didn't sleep last night. My kids drove me crazy, whatever the scenario is. You could go there, or you might do what traditionally people do, which is say, I'm fine, which is not bad or good. But if I asked you the question, what's the best thing that's happened to you today? Your mind would go into a totally different process of thinking through that. It would go into a different neural pathway in the brain. And what's really interesting about it, and you probably have experienced this yourself, is sometimes when we ask an appreciative question like that, people still tend to want to go into the negative. So they might say, well, the best thing that happened is I made it to work on time today, but I had this problem with this, because we're so conditioned to focus on what's broken or wrong as a coping mechanism. So that's just to be aware, is even when you're using appreciative inquiry, somebody could still go down a negative path. So it's not wrong if they do. It's just helpful when you're doing appreciative interviews to pull them back. Okay, so that's really the worst case scenario that you did not expect today. What would it look like if you were able to have a day without that? Tell me that story. So appreciative inquiry is a way that you build teamwork, because when I was telling that story about the husband and wife being in front of a counselor, if that wife is saying, oh, he doesn't ever help and his mom spoiled him and all that, now what you're doing is you're creating conversations of scarcity and blame and criticism, and that does not foster community or healthy relationships. So simple things that could be a good appreciative inquiry question would be to ask your family, what's one thing you've done recently that you're proud of? Or what kind of outcome would you feel happiest with? Or how would you and other people be feeling if it was the way you wanted it to be? So Lisa kind of alluded to that she came into her meetings differently and had this different outcome. Lisa, can you tell the audience a little bit more about some of the projects that you and I worked on? Because I know there was one in particular where we did a phone call together and really went over the process. And I don't know if you feel, ready to do that, but let me know whatever you want to share with them. I would love for them to hear that.
Sure. So we had a project, and it was about taking a different approach to getting any patient concerns into a different format and how we were going to do that. And the first thing I asked the team to do was say, in our kind of discovery phase of saying, what are we doing that we're doing well? So we started there, and that really kind of lifted the momentum for the conversation. Then we moved into the dream state that I was talking about of what's the best thing that can happen if we had no rules, no parameters, if we could do anything we wanted to do. And I think that really lifts some of the burden and the tenseness to coming up with solutions. And so then we were really able to get to that third phase of designing what the future was going to look like for us with that project, and really thinking outside the box. And everyone just, started brainstorming in a way that was really intuitive and positive. And you could just tell that there wasn't that cloud of, we can't do that. Oh, well, what about that? I don't know, that we've tried that, it didn't work. We just had a much different approach to it, and people were engaged. And then you take it to the fourth state of delivery. And what are we going to actually do with all these things we talked about? And how can we implement them? And so that 4D kind of cycle that you talk about in appreciative inquiry was huge in getting us to a point. And I would kind of stay back, and as everyone walked out of the conference room, and I saw smiles on people's faces rather than, they're digging through their binders. What's my next task? What do I got to do now? It wasn't a mundane task that they had to add on to their day. It was something that they were excited about doing and being a part of.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that, because when we do the appreciative inquiry workshops live and we have the group stand up and do appreciative inquiry interviews with each other, the energy in the room just goes up and up and up and up. Like everybody starts laughing and talking louder and more joyfully and with more enthusiasm. And afterwards, I'll often say, what do you guys notice about what happened to the energy in the room? It really is true that what inspires us builds that momentum, as you said. So I really love the fact that you were paying attention to the energy of things, because the energy of things will affect somebody the entire day. So those people that were in that meeting, they probably went forward and had a much different neuro track that they were on for at least some time as a result.
It's a wonderful feeling when you see people walk out with a smile and not what do I got to do?
I'm overwhelmed, or I'm more stressed now, or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Lisa, I want to take a minute to really review with our listeners that Lifeworks system specializes in performance management through healthy culture transformation. So I'm inviting you, the listeners, to go to our website and learn more about Lifeworks systems. We have videos on just about every page. We have over 200 published articles. We have webinars. We have my book can be downloaded. We have free surveys. There's so much information on there, including information related to today's podcast episode or any of the other podcasts. Our website is lifeworksystems.com. We hope that you'll come and subscribe to our podcast. You can find the main points of each podcast and a list of all the previous podcasts. So we also invite you to join our mailing list so that you receive information on the new things that come out just about daily. And also, if you want to contact us, you can find our phone and email information as well. Most of us have not necessarily been invited to share a story. We're not necessarily taught to be storytellers. One of the reasons, Lisa, that I went into this work with Adlerian psychology, or individual psychology it's often called, is that in my family, my parents were more about teaching me than letting me teach them anything. That's why I'm such a teacher now, probably. What I see in one of the 4 core needs, which is helping people feel lovable, it's letting them tell their stories. So in appreciative inquiry, I remember when we kind of went over this, what are the questions that allow us to kind of get all the meat off the bone? So when I was sharing the story about, tell me when you and your wife were the happiest, what were you saying about each other? What were you saying to each other? What were others saying to you and about you? And so I think it's kind of new for people to open into their story, because we've almost been discouraged, like, come on, get to the point, as opposed to that finesse of like getting the entire picture of what somebody's saying to us. Did you find that to be a new experience or difficult in any way? Or what'd you think about that part?
It was definitely a new experience. It's about creating those images and creating a reality and really changing a mindset to give people confidence and comfort in being able to spit out anything. Because of that dream phase, it made that possible for everyone to just have a more motivating approach to it, I think.
Did you find at first that people had a hard time learning how to kind of pull all the goodness of the story forward? I know that was what was new for me when I first learned it. Like, wow, it feels weird to be asking so many sort of image-driven questions, and yet I got excited about their story.
Yeah, I mean, it was very easy to fall back into let's solve the problem, back into the dirt. And I would kind of just change the way I asked the question to be in a different light or a more positive appearance. And I just kept doing it. And it was interesting how everyone just kind of got on board without even really noticing.
Right. And it's interesting that you use the phrase, I would change up the question, because a lot of times for me, that would look like, tell me the story of what would be happening. Even using the word story for me has helped people to relax into, she's not asking for a 1-word or 1-sentence answer. She wants me to tell her the story. I almost think we've been shamed for telling our story. And we actually should be encouraging each other to tell our story, because that gives us hope, but it also sometimes does uncover things that we can then move through and go to a more positive side of it. When I first learned about appreciative inquiry, my kids were still at home, and I learned about how powerful our speaking is anyway. Like, we're always telling a story in our words. Like, for example, when I would leave my kids before I knew appreciative inquiry, and I would leave them with a babysitter, I would say things like, now be good, don't give her any problems. That's a catastrophizing kind of thing to say. Whereas in appreciative inquiry, just having the awareness of it, I would say, hey, I know you guys are going to have a great time. And I would be able to say to the babysitter, these kids will be so helpful to you, and I'm sure you guys will have a blast together. And so appreciative inquiry starts changing the way we talk about a lot of things, because we either become a person that's looking for those problems and focusing on them, or we're looking for what can we put into a conversation that is like fertilizer, to grow something instead of weeding where we're consciously trying to kill the weeds. So anyway, I just noticed that it kind of changed my mindset about communication in general, because we really are always telling a story.
I think it's harder to translate it into my day-to-day home life than it was at work. I have to work a little harder at home.
Okay. Have you tried using it at all there?
I have. Yeah.
Can you tell me a story about anything you've done with that at home?
Well, sure. I have a 17-year-old, so you can only imagine some of the stuff that happens. But so, she's out on her own. I'm trying to stop saying, okay, remember to do this, remember to do that, don't do this. I'm saying, oh, I know you're going to make really good decisions out there. You're a good hard worker, and I know that you have good head on your shoulders. So I'll see you later. I'm trying to change the way I say things like that.
Yeah, it is part of working. And, it made me think of when you just said that is in redirecting negative behavior, which is another topic, but Lisa will know what I'm talking about. Yeah. When we're helping somebody in the goal of inadequacy, what we're doing at times is saying, oh my gosh, I remember the time when you solved X, Y, and Z, and we tell that story to remind the person you're a very capable person. But we have to go into the question within ourselves, what's a positive story about this person? So we're either using appreciative inquiry to help people and to help ourselves, or we're not really in anything we're saying and thinking. So appreciative inquiry is a very practical thing because you're always looking for an intentional question that would lead you toward a success you have had, a success you are having, or a success you will have, you can see could happen. I remember one time I was having an argument with somebody on my team, and we were going to meet and talk about it. So before we did, I could feel this trepidation about it, a lot of stress inside of myself about it. And what I did was I asked myself appreciative questions like, when have I been really successful on a team? What are the stories of that? And then what is it that I do well on teams right now? Even with this person, what is it I do well with them? And what would be the most positive outcome I could imagine at the end of our conversation? And I remember even envisioning by the end of this conversation, we're going to be smiling at each other. We might even hug each other. We might be saying things like, oh my gosh, I never thought it could turn out so good. And that's exactly what happened. It was really interesting because I remember him approaching the table where we were meeting at a coffee shop, and I could see this sort of like protected look on his face. But as soon as he sat down and we got started, because I was in a different place, he quickly moved into a different place with me. I didn't enter him in the fear. He entered me in kind of the appreciative mind that I was sitting in. And by the end of it, everything I had envisioned was happening. We were smiling, we were laughing, we even hugged each other and both said, oh my gosh, this is great. I'm so grateful. And so I just know that I consciously thought to go do that, but it's not always easy. Lisa, when I was sharing this information about healthy culture transformation, I really can't think of a better organization than ESSA for doing that. Is there anything that you want to say about your experience on the team or observing the team related to this culture transformation process?
Well, I have an interesting perspective because I was in a department that didn't engage in LifeWorks for the first couple of years that I was at ESSA Health, first 2 or 3 I was at ESSA Health. And then I moved into this new department with Aaron Stam, and this was a culture that they had adopted for a good year or so, possibly 2 before I joined. And it was awesome when I joined Aaron's team. And the first thing was, let's get you guys involved in LifeWorks and let you kind of experience that. And so when I see it going on, and I've seen, one-on-one, it's where people have said, you know what, let's take a moment, step aside and talk about what's going on here, because I'm not feeling like we're on the same page. And then they come out of that conversation and you see a work relationship that is better from it all. So I think that what they have adopted and what I have now adopted has really changed the way I communicate with people around me, from work to home to my neighbors to whatever, realizing what kind of state I am in. If I'm frustrated or angry or feeling low, I can reassess more about what I'm feeling and what's putting me in that position, rather than jumping to a feeling of wanting to do something that may not really be what's going on. So I had a much better understanding of communication once I got involved with LifeWorks and started really kind of working the program a little bit.
Well, it's interesting because I think one of the places where you might be referring to is when you go to mentoring. Maybe you're not, but when you go to mentoring, the first 2 things that happen are expressing appreciation. So even the person mentoring you is first asking, what is it that is so awesome about Lisa? And then sharing that with you. And then what is our purpose and values, and talking about that? That's already very appreciative when you enter a conversation where maybe your primary goals are to solve problems in that meeting, but you're starting out with appreciative questions, really, and appreciative statements. When you were talking about one-on-one, I don't know if you meant mentoring or if you meant when I just meet with people, I have solutions. So the difference is that whether it's appreciative inquiry or some other communication tool, you feel like you have a set of tools you can refer to.
That's exactly what I was saying, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think you make a really valid point. Sometimes a company is really large, like ESSA. They have over 1,000 employees. And not everybody has been through the LifeWorks systems culture transformation. And yet, what I hear pretty repeatedly are people that move from one department like you did, Lisa, and they experience the contrast. And they realize, wow, this is a different experience that I'm having over here. And so I think that's a really great thing to know, is that you have that bird's eye view of, I know the contrast personally, up close and, personal.
Yes, agreed.
So any place right now in your life where you feel like appreciative inquiry is something that, since we're talking about it, you're like, oh my gosh, I could use it for this. Is there any place that's happening for you?
Oh, I think that for me, it's just continuing to work on that in my home life and how I'm communicating with my family.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, at work, I think for some reason it becomes an easier process for me because
Mm-hmm.
I've adopted it for my project meetings, and I start out all my project meetings with that methodology now, rather than digging in the dirt. I'm panning for the gold. But at home, I still have to stop and rephrase in my head what I'm going to say before I say it sometimes.
Oh yeah, we just fall into habits. I remember when one of your managers, Kate, was promoted. She came to me in a session and said, I guess I can't hang out with my friend Hannah anymore. And I said, hey, have you forgotten that this is a different culture model than the conventional model where you have to be power over someone? And she was like, oh, you're kidding. And I said, no, as long as you are in the same level of holding, people responsible or teaching people how to be responsible, you don't have to be above Hannah. You get to still be peers with each other, as long as you're doing your responsibilities as a manager. And that's what happens when we go home. It's like we take off these great skills we might be learning at work and forget to put them on when we go home. So we used appreciative inquiry one time. I don't know, you probably know this story, Lisa. We used it in a whole school setting. We did it in a project designed to teach the parents, the teachers, the administrators, and the students appreciative inquiry. So what we did in this project, the whole project was more than appreciative inquiry, but appreciative inquiry was part of it. And so what we did was we taught these high school students how to do appreciative inquiry. And then we invited in 200 people from the outside community. And the only requirement was that they had to have graduated high school. And so these kids were asking questions of these adults like, tell me a story of when you wanted to quit something at school, but you didn't. You hung in there instead. What motivated you? What inspired you? What gave you the determination? Tell me that whole story. And then they asked the adults, will you tell me some of the stories about how your education proved to be a worthwhile use of your time now that you're grown in adulthood? And then they asked them a question at the end that was, knowing that I'm a city school district student, what would be your best vision for my life? And what happened was the adults that came in and were interviewed were so connected with the students that they kept saying, call us if you want us to come do anything else. This was amazing. And I really got to know this person. And I remember different adults connecting with the kids in such a way that they were helping them. One wanted to be a writer, and she happened to get partnered with an adult that was an author. And so all kinds of dreams started coming forward from that experience together. So now those kids know how to have appreciative inquiry conversations. I remember going to one of their family meetings, because in our project, the kids would have classroom meetings and they'd go home and have family meetings. And one of the students in the family meeting said, I think we need an appreciative inquiry question right now. And he was one of the kids who always acted like, he was too cool for all this stupid stuff, but then when he was at home, in a family meeting, I saw him use 3 or 4 of the tools. And so that was very heartening for me to see. Anything else that you want to talk about on this? I know we're kind of all over the place.
I hope that other folks listening take you up on your offer to change the way they are going about it and thinking about appreciative inquiry as an opportunity to change the way they communicate with others, because it certainly made a change for me in the best way.
I appreciate you saying that, Lisa, because it means a lot more coming from you than it does from me. I want to acknowledge you for jumping in so wholeheartedly. I know when I learned all these different concepts and tools, I was very excited about them and very passionate about them, but not everybody is. And I have always felt your commitment, your curiosity, your enthusiasm, your willingness, your courage. I've always felt it in you. You fill out the surveys at the end of the training. You contacted me when you needed answers to things. And it's just been a delight working with you and knowing you. And I'm so grateful that you took out this time to help with this podcast today. So thank you so much. Erin sent me an email recently sharing how positive the teamwork is going. Is it still going that way?
Yeah, I think we really had a unique experience where we basically had to roll out a telehealth platform to our entire company in about 4 days, which touched everybody from IT to operations to the guys, the help desk, you name it. It touched everybody. And it was amazing. Everybody just jumped in and did what they needed to do. And it's we have bumps along the way, but we're all working together in a really positive way.
Do you feel that the Lifeworks systems process helped you? I know that's really putting you on the spot, but do you think that made a difference for this happening?
Yes.
I think the reason Erin Stam shared that story with me about how strong the teamwork is, I think she shared it because she wanted me to know that you guys were maintaining, that you guys were walking the talk, and it was really showing.
Yeah. When you run into a crisis like that, and, they had to get people who have never worked from home, they had to get them all ready to work from home for a really long period of time, a period we didn't even really know and still don't know. So IT was just under the gun for everything. Everybody wanted them. Everybody needed something from them. And it was now. And they just did an amazing job.
Yeah, see, I think what's so important to recognize in that is that you guys have paid the dues. You have done the work. And so now when crisis hits, you guys are strong and resilient. I'm sure it's not perfect, but you guys are strong and resilient compared to the vast majority of people that are in this situation right now.
Yeah.
And I just believe it's because you guys paid the dues. You guys did the work.
I think so too. Because as I get more involved with it, I'm like, it sounds like there were some hard conversations that went on that people did and had the courage to do it, because that's not easy to do, to confront people that you may have had some issues with, or that you can make your relationship better, whatever the realm of it was. And they have, and it's awesome.
Yeah, so they had difficult conversations, but they got all the way to the other side of resolution is what I think you're describing, right?
Yeah, it looks like it.
Do me a favor, Lisa, when you're with the rest of the team or you see different teams, will you let them know that I see their strengths and that I hope that they're proud of themselves? Because I really do believe you guys did the work and you're reaping the benefits. And I want them to know I'm proud, and I hope they're proud.
I will definitely do that. You have really changed my life for the better, and I'm so thankful for it.
I'm glad. I'm so glad to know, because I miss all of you guys.
Oh, I miss you too.
And I want to just thank our listeners for joining us today. This podcast is brought to you by LifeWorks Systems, and I'm the CEO and host, Judy Ryan. Again, my intent is to provide you with hope and new ideas for greater joy, because my mission is to create a world where all people love their lives, and I hope you'll join me in that. I also ask you to consider giving us a high rating on this podcast, because it really makes a difference in helping other people choose to select our podcast, and that way we can help more people. So I hope that you make a commitment today to ask yourself appreciative questions about how can I make my life work today. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening to LifeWorks today. This podcast has been brought to you by Lifeworks Systems CEO and host Judy Ryan. The intent of this podcast is to provide you with hope and new ideas for greater joy in your life and work. For more information on our organization and earlier podcast episodes, related articles, videos, and more, please visit our website at lifeworksystems.com. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast and mailing list. We invite you to join us in creating a world in which all people love their lives and where your life works today.